start with your name.
My name is Wendy Marshall.
And what is Stadium Stompers?
Stadium Stompers is a coalition of North Philadelphia community residents and Temple University students, and we also have people from other parts of Philly and other campuses who have come together to fight the stadium, Temple's proposed stadium at 15th and Norris, and in a long-term sense to fight displacement. We don't want this neighborhood to look like it does around UPenn.
And what's your biggest concern about the stadium?
Well, the community has been under tremendous pressures in the last several decades in terms of rising rents and rising property influx of wealthy white outsiders. This is a really important historic black community, and a lot of Stadium Stomper members have, deep ties and profound memories of what it meant to grow up in this place. So I think what we're doing is trying to save that and to create a community that thrives. And Temple has no interest whatsoever in the community. They're just into land grabbing and real estate deals, and they don't care if the community thrives or not. So this is a response.
Does it make sense to build a stadium?
No, it does not make sense to build a stadium. I mean, I think, if you have some kind of fantasy of Temple joining the big leagues of college football, and I don't even know the details about whatever the NCAA, whatever it is. If you have some kind of fantasies about Temple becoming this major school with a big football team and a big stadium, then I guess it does. But it doesn't have anything to do with the surrounding community and the people who live here and work here and have been born here, and whose parents have died here, right? So it doesn't make sense from the perspective of a struggling community, right, at all. It does. It's another harm inflicted on the community, instead of trying to understand ways that we can build a community that thrives and how Temple can be a part of that.
And you mentioned that this is a neighborhood that, because of Temple and outside developers, is struggling. That really brings to question, what do you want to see instead of the stadium?
Well, I have a long list of things that I would like to see. I think that the priorities in this city and at Temple University and in this state and in this country are very, very skewed. Everything from the amount of money that goes to the Pentagon and to the Defense Department to fund aggressive wars against other people, to the fact that corporations don't pay their fair share. All of those things are part of the problem, and are like, and this struggle is part of that struggle, even though it's a small part of it, right? There's some deep connections. I mean, because why is there a priority about building a stadium in a community that has a lot of problems that need to be addressed, right? So instead of building, say, a viable public school system, to educate people, or figuring out how to have a healthcare system that addresses the very real health needs in a place like North Philadelphia, somebody's going to spend a couple of $100 million on a stadium. That does not make sense in any world, right? And certainly not the world that I inhabit. It doesn't make sense at all. So I think, that's what this fight's about. It's about centering it on the community. This beautiful, wonderful, viable community, and stopping the forces that are trying to stamp it out, right? So we're trying to stomp on the stadium instead.
And you mentioned that Stadium Stompers is connected to other groups or moments in history in this neighborhood in Philadelphia. Can you talk a little bit more about what are some other historical moments that have happened here that add to that narrative of community resistance to development and gentrification?
Uh-oh. Sorry. You're gonna edit this, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm okay. Well, Stadium Stompers is definitely in the tradition of communities that have come together to organize and to fight for the things that they need, right? And there's a long tradition of that in Philadelphia. But part of what's happened um, is that through state programs and federal programs and the police, there's been a lot of repression, right? And so I think part of what's exciting to me right now is that I think I'm 54 years old, I've been around a long time, and for the first time in my life, I feel like we're on the edge of a viable movement. And so an effort like Stadium Stompers is definitely part of that, right? That people aren't believing anymore the mainstream stories that get put out about what's good for us. We're starting to figure out that we know what's good for us, and that stuff isn't it, right? So I feel like Stadium Stompers is both part of a historical continuum of struggle, of Black community struggle in particular, but also struggle in general, and also part of a growing movement, a growing anti-capitalist, anti-white supremacist movement about what we think the world, what the world we need to thrive in looks like. How do we make that world? And I think that's part of what we're doing. Is that all right? Is that good?
Yeah, whatever you say.
Great.
All right.
What's your relationship with North Philly?
I teach at Temple University. I lived in North Philly briefly for a couple of times in my ins and outs of Philly in my life, but my connection to Stadium Stompers came through my role as an adjunct at Temple, and also because before Stadium Stompers started, I had started to work with Reverend Renee McKenzie here at Church of the Advocate on a liberation theology project. So that's my connection to North Philly. North Philly, I'm not from North Philly, but my people are from North Philly, and so that's my connection and my commitment.
And lastly, have you been an activist in the past?
I have. I have been an activist in the past. I was trained as a community organizer in 1986 out of the Center for Third World Organizing. So I come from a genealogical tradition that includes SNCC and the farm workers, welfare rights. Those were the people that trained me. I was a community organizer in Harlem, in New York City in the 1980s. I have been a living wage campaign activist. So I have a long history of struggle. Been around since my first struggle was in the late 70s as a teenager in the anti-apartheid struggle. So I've been around a lot, and here I still am.
Thank you, Wendy.
You're welcome. You're very welcome. Did I get a tan from that light?
Is there anything else you think we should add to the video that we didn't cover?
No, but I realize that my question about what do you think about the stadium being built is kind of lame. I'm just trying to see, because we're going to do this alternative feasibility study, and I think it's mainly going to be a web thing because it's not like we have any money to print. So I'm just thinking about how we can have clips on it that you guys take where people answer the question, and maybe that's not the best question. What do you think?
By that you mean you're referring to the question about what you would like to see instead of the stadium?
Or what was the question that I had, Josh? It was sort of like, what do you...
It was, does it make sense to build the stadium? Mm-hmm. And that logic, I guess that word sense is kind of the key word there.
I don't know. When you asked me that, I was like much more interested in all the other questions except for that one. So...
We can always ask it
and see how it goes.
Or it could be, not does it make sense. I feel like a good question too would be, how does this represent what Temple has been like? Because people think the stadium is just one thing that Temple has done, that suddenly Temple has been is going to be gentrifying. Oh my God! But it's something that people have fought for generations
Right.
for, and even I know the Norris Streets homes back there on that south, how people fought for that in order for it to become like to prevent it from being gentrified. So how do you think Stadium Stompers connects to not just the struggles everywhere else, but in Philadelphia specifically?
Oh, I see. That's how you wanted me to answer. Okay, that last question that you had. Let's see. That's good.
So just for context, the project, some of the angle that we're using for this project is we want to understand unfair development in this part of Philadelphia, and we see Temple very much as an agent of that unfair development. So connecting it to the history of gentrification in Philly would be helpful, if that's what you feel comfortable talking about. So whatever you feel that like you have to contribute to that, or if you think that narrative can be expanded.
No, I think that's good, and so I understand better how you wanted me to answer the historical question. And did you guys hear Jackie talking about the Charette agreement?
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
probably have.
And there was actually, it's interesting because there was a similar agreement that I haven't been able to find any information about.
It's okay. It's okay. You want me to do this next time?
Yeah.
You want to do it next time? You get the better thorough interview?
It has to be, no, actually we're looking for something really, really short, like 1 minute or less. So
Okay.
just whatever question you think is the most important or the most provocative, I guess.
Sure. So, instead of the stadium, what would you like to see being built and focused on in Philadelphia?
Instead of the stadium, I'd like to see what's basically existing right now be enhanced a lot more. Such as, say, one of the problems, the pet problems that I had with the neighborhood is the parking. I mean, it creates such a public safety hazard. Maybe Temple can take some of that money and build a parking lot for the students to park there free or incorporate it into their tuition, and that would alleviate, the public safety hazards in the neighborhood. And just in general, commune with the community. Ask us what we like and how can they help us and we help them. And just, in general, be a community, which is something they haven't been doing for years and years and years. And just my idea about the stadium is just in the wrong place. It's never going to be a good time for something like that in a community like this. It's just going to bring it down. We already have problems on top of problems, and it's just going to add more problems. They say, oh, but it's going to bring jobs. Not going to bring a whole lot of jobs for a whole lot of people for a long period of time or anything as such. So I don't think it's a good idea at all. Even if it wasn't where it is, even if it was at 12th and Girard, even if it was at somewhere else, in a community like this, it's not a good idea at all. Just not at all. It's like trying to put a size 11 boot into a woman's 6 shoe, and it just it's not going to work as far as I'm concerned.
That's great, yeah.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
That was a great response, yeah.
And sorry, your name one more time, just so we have it.
Kenny Johnson.
Kenneth Johnson. Thank you. Thanks very
Sure.
much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You guys take care.
This
it okay if I look at the paper?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So what's your name?
My name is Ruth Burchett.
And what's your relationship with North Philadelphia?
Well, I was born and raised in North Philadelphia, and my family we're fifth generation, and my family has occupied multiple properties in North Philadelphia since 1950.
What was it like growing up?
There was a really amazing sense of community. We didn't have any vacant properties. We didn't have abandoned houses. Our neighborhood's architecture was very, very beautiful, which is not what you see today. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of demolition over the decades ever since John Street was voted in as councilperson of the 5th Councilmatic District.
Do you think some of the things that have been happening for years, what do you think the city of Philadelphia can do to impact North Philly or the stadium?
Well, that's a difficult question because very often people look at the abandonment of properties and the huge vacant lots and the fact that contractors often short dump construction debris onto these lots, and so our neighborhood looks very trashy. The sense of neighborhood has been robbed from us with the demolition of homes, and no one wants to live in someone else's backyard. You want to live with some greenery and clean sidewalks and things such as the elders taught us to do. And so for so many decades, going back at least 50 years that I know of, I've heard rumors about the city planners wanting to move Center City up and pull down Germantown and get rid of North Philadelphia. It seems that fast forwarding to 2016, that those plans have been enacted. And so I question what the city of Philadelphia can do to help, because they have been the architect of our demise. And but minimally, what the city can do and this council can do is to ensure that funding that the city of Philadelphia receives for neighborhood revitalization and community and economic development, that it be targeted and used in North Philadelphia as well as other parts of the city.
Now, you spoke with Darrell Clark today. What's his role in all of this?
Darrell Clark, his role in this is that he is the councilman that was elected for the 5th Councilmatic District. And as such, he is responsible for passing bills and operating to the advantage of our community. It appears, has been working to the disadvantage of our community. And we, as Stadium Stompers here now, myself, want to dispel the myth that Stadium Stompers are not just Temple students and 15 now. That Stadium Stompers are, in fact, community residents who are very vested in and have great ideas about what our community should look like, and that we do not want our council person, Darrell Clark, sitting in isolation and making deals with people that are injurious to us and the real property that we possess, which is our homes.
How do you feel that meeting went today?
I believe that the Stadium Stompers had a real opportunity to see up close and personal Darrell Clark and his contempt for his constituency and other citizens of the city of Philadelphia. He was belligerent at times. I have seen him at work. I have, been on the receiving end of his discontent about community people rising up in opposition to points that he has. And so I really want to, convey that it is a great thing that multiple members of the group came out today to show that our strength and our conviction to fight Temple University having a stadium in a residential community. We are prepared to fight any and everyone who is on the opposing side of our quest.
Anything else you want to add?
I just am very grateful to 15 Now for arranging the initial meeting. I'm grateful to the people who came up with the Stadium Stomper name. I'm grateful to the Temple students who believe that community should be listened to and that it's a problem when the university is planning without the involvement of community. And so I'm grateful for the partnership that has emerged and looking forward to strengthening the partnership in other segments of our community to fight this battle. I'm real clear after today's meeting with Darrell Clark that I have to do some community organizing apart from Stadium Stompers so that he's getting the pressure at all ends. And there's some things that other groups can do, and there's some things that community residents can do. And he will try to avoid us, which is why I recommended that we do this action today in the way that we did, and I believe it was extremely effective. We got an inside chamber meeting with the council president, who President Theobald of Temple keeps referring to. And I think we need to be real careful about who we talk with. For example, some of the Stadium Stompers are talking with this gentleman over here now, and even though I've warned them, I understand the political environment and how, people try to find out stuff and then relay it back. And so people begin to know our inside strategy. So, loose lips sink ships.
Amen. Thank you, Ms.
He's a
Reed.
snake in the grass.
What's your name?
My name is Jacqueline Wiggins, and I am a Stadium Stomper. Now, who are the Stadium Stompers? Well, the Stadium Stompers came about as a result of finding out that Temple University has a proposed plan to build a stadium in North Central Philadelphia on property that it says it owns at Broad and Norris Street, from Broad to 16th and from Broad and Norris over to Blues. It's a little catchment area. And we formed this collaboration of community residents, people who've lived there a long time, some who may not be as long as I have, we've been there like 50 years, Temple University residents and students, and I say that because some of the Temple University students are residents, and interested others to try and find out what's going on in our neighborhood with respect to a stadium, a 35,000-seat stadium being built in our midst.
Is there something you'd like to see instead of a stadium?
I think that one of the things I heard students say, and I don't know if it would take up all that footage that's there, would be a crisis center. It seems as though the students if something happens on campus, they have to go up to Hunting Park. That's quite a ways to go if you're traumatized. That would be something ideal on campus. I don't know, for example, just my own idea, if Temple University has a real incubator for business development, which is something that is wanted, is really truly needed in North Central. So those are just my ideas. But that would be something. The Crisis Center is something that students have been clamoring for.
How long have you been living in North Central?
Well, let's see. We moved from my grandma's house on North 15th Street when I was about 3, so by the time I was 4, we were Raymond Rose in public housing, and we moved to Page Street, where I live now, in 1960. So it's 55 years, I think, if I did it.
And is there anything else you want to add?
Well, one of the things that happened today was an action with Stadium Stompers. We've done, I think, a number of great actions. We had a public hearing. We had a really good rally of about 500 to 800 people. And today we had a good number of people come out on a day when people are working because the meeting with City Council was 10 o'clock. So we still had some students, and we had community residents, a number of homeowners. And just for the record, we had asked for a meeting with Councilman Clark. I put it in this way. I came to City Hall to ask for a meeting. I was told I had to do that through his scheduler. So I went home, took the email address I put in on the 20th for a request. I heard nothing until yesterday. And I was trying to figure in my mind how'd that happen. Well, then I thought about what I did earlier that morning. I sent an email directly to Councilman Clark's office, putting in the other email to say I had not heard from your scheduler. So when the Stadium Stompers arrived today, we sort of called to his office. What? How do you say? How'd that happen? But it did happen. So as an outcome of that, he said he would meet with us, but I have any number of questions in terms of his knowledge, his real commitment to this not happening, because it's very vague to say the community. As far as I know, there could be people running around paying off people to say, yeah, we want the stadium. You see, it's a mixed bag here. So being vague is very interesting. If you're adamantly opposed, you say you're adamantly opposed, there will be no stadium. And that way the Board of Trustees would have been sent a message by now that you don't go forward in hiring an architect. You don't go forward with your plan. You go find another spot for your plan. And you calm down.
That's great. Thank you.
So we can talk and let you know what's going on. We all kind of get on it because I think that we can use this time to debrief a little bit. I had no idea that Indian and the reading. I thought they were staying there. Yeah, well, they're not here. I don't know. Pastor
Well, I think we can meet because I think the thing we need to do is sit right down.
just sit right here. Come on. We pay for commandeering the caucus.
Come on, everybody. Let's sit right here.
Come on. So here's the thing. Does anybody want to make comment about our action today?
I think we were on a positive note. I think we were strong, and you were very clear on what the Stadium Stompers were about and how the community, they're concerned about the devastation possibilities that might happen if it's built, and that Mr. Clark should come and talk to the community. That was very clear. So I hope we do have that meeting.
Yeah, and rezoning is a problem. You have to rezone your areas from multiple family dwellings to single family dwellings. And that's what we're trying to do in Mantua right now. Because they're building so many buildings that are.
Well, see, our problem in our area is that our zoning is actually residential / residential multi-use.
And see, that's now, it's changing.
And I just looked at my thing yesterday, and it said that, exactly, it read all three houses, I was trying to get, it said that, residential / residential.
And see, they told us you can't do that.
Yeah.
And just in reference, but if we could stay on topic, just in reference to the stadium, we were offered an opportunity to be on WURD, and so at 12:20,
It's
I will go
12:15
to speak with,
It's 12:15.
12:15? Wow. Okay, so it might end up being a little bit later, but, we will go in and speak with, Vincent Thompson. He asked me to check back in with him. So we really wanna, I didn't know that everybody was gonna, like Wendy and we're gonna be leaving. However, so we can make a joint decision here about, I don't know how many people he's gonna wanna interview, but we can at least come up with a plan. That's what the main thing I wanted to talk about. To come up with a plan for us who would go on the radio. Any suggestions? She already knows. We're dealing with who's here. Okay. Because the interview is minutes away.
Okay.
Well, and so, if he's,
the good talkers.
Well, if he's with,
where the girl can tell, she left.
Well, this might be the better group though. Because we're the community and they're all trying to say that the students aren't the community, even though we don't feel that way.
Right.
But if they hear the voice of the community,
And that's what's
important.
I totally agree with
so
you.
I feel like the group that's here, we're the ones that need to talk to them.
Okay, so who's willing to talk? I don't know how many he will ask for, but who's willing to speak?
I'm willing to talk.
Okay.
Okay, I want to make it clear. Now I can speak about how I feel about where I live, and I can also speak about if the stadium is built, what it means to me and how I feel about that. That I can speak on.
Okay, that's relevant. That's relevant. Okay, so whoever's interested in speaking, begin to think about what you would want to say, and then I will let you all know how many people he agrees, he wants to interview. And we probably still all can just go back in there and you can, witness the whole thing. But I'm just looking for him.
You're speaking, we're speaking to him where?
In council chambers. He's there. They have the media box that's elevated where you see the people with the cameras and things, but then WURD, because they're broadcasting live. That's FM 900 FM. Yeah, I want to make sure everybody knows.
900 AM.
Yeah, 900 AM, I'm sorry. So, he's down on the floor. He hasn't, no, he's on the opposite side.
So we're not going to be in front of them, council people?
No. He just wants to interview us.
Oh, on the side?
Yeah. But I wanted to get in my head who was interested in speaking on camera. That's all. I mean, not.
That's on camera.
It's on the radio. It's on the radio.
And he's got a good chunk of time for us. And so I've known him a long time, and I'm going to talk with him ahead to see how he wants to do it, whether he wants to do kind of like this.
Yeah, this would be
a group interview, if he wants to do that. So it's Denise, Gail, Jacqueline, myself, and okay. Red Orange Hat Lady, are you interested in speaking?
Come on, Max, can you talk about the other?
Just checking with you.
Come on, Max.
Okay, all right, so.
Okay. That's it. Okay, just if I have to understand it, please.
That's my house.
Oh, good. I'm glad you said that. Okay, good. I can feel my bottle.
Earlier this morning, this body recognized come at a better time. Worker safety is, of course, about physical environment in which a person works, but it's also about the system in which they do their job.
That they already own. Our neighborhood is blighted now because of PHA. They don't manage the land that they own. They don't manage the houses that they own. The long-term tenants are in scattered sites. They should own those scattered sites. Many of them have been in those properties for over 30 years. We talk about security and monitoring mortgages. Those folks should be moved to homeownership immediately. And PHA should be made to maintain what they had before they go into this unprecedented development, claim that they're going to do something that they've never done before. This is misuse of power. This is ignorance, alarm of power, giving an unjust opportunity for others to come from outside to now take over land as North Philly rises. Thank you for the opportunity.
Sheila Lloyd. Commenting on 160256. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Council. I haven't voted anything there. I'm just going from the heart. And I'm speaking on Bill 160256 as a constituent. We have elected y'all and put y'all in office because of the oath that y'all have taken, because of the trust that we feel that y'all have. You know, where I come from, your word is your bond, and all you have is your word. You know, we've been coming here consistently. We have testified, we have brought forth a lot of evidence showing how things has been misappropriated. I heard Councilwoman Parker say about Sam Slayton Sr., and I knew him too, and how he never spoke with a forked tongue, and I heard a whole lot of y'all say y'all would love to model after this young. But it's not, because y'all tell us one thing and you spin us in a second. Just like I didn't know the Sheriff's Department worked with the Sheriff's Department, so they say, came out Saturday and stuck this bogus notice on my door. Number one, I don't even have a mailbox. They put it in a mailbox. They delivered this Saturday. And from what I understand, like, it's not even signed by a judge. It's these two law firms, and I just can't wrap my head around how is council allowing these two law firms to continue to poison the minds. You're talking about murder? But when you displace people out of their homes that they have owned for years, that's murder. Thank you.
There are no other speakers on the public comment list, Mr. President. Thank you very much, Mr. Decker. Now, sorry. Chair recognizes Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. President. This time I'd like to be excused from the remainder of the council session and be recorded as I on all bills and resolutions.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you.
So reflects. This time we will move to our calendar.